Your AC is on full blast, it's 94 degrees outside, and the air coming out of your vents feels like someone's breathing on you instead of cooling you down. Most people blame the compressor, they blame the refrigerant. They start pricing out a $1,200 repair before they've even popped the hood. Here's what almost nobody checks first: a flat little rectangle of pleated paper sitting behind your glove box, usually about the size of a paperback book. It's called the cabin air filter, and unlike your engine air filter, it doesn't touch your engine at all. It filters the air that comes into your car through the vents. Every leaf, every bit of pollen, every fine grain of road dust that would otherwise land in your lungs gets caught by that filter instead. The problem is what happens after 5 years of catching all of that. I pulled one out of a customer's Camry last week. It wasn't gray, it wasn't dusty. It was solid brown, packed edge to edge with compressed leaf matter and grit, stiff enough that I could have used it as a cutting board. That car's blower motor was working overtime just to push air through a filter that had turned into a wall. The owner had already replaced the AC compressor 8 months earlier, $460. The airflow problem never went away because nobody had looked behind the glove box. This is the fix mechanics almost never mention because there's no labor to bill for it. It takes most people under 5 minutes, no tools required on about 70% of vehicles, and it's usually an $8 to $18 part. I'm going to show you exactly where it is, how to tell if yours is the culprit, and how to swap it before you spend $1 on anything else. Stick around, because before we get into your specific car, I also want to show you the 2-second test you can do right now, engine off. That tells you in about 4 seconds whether this is actually your problem. It's the same test I use on customer vehicles before I ever quote a repair. Quick thing before we go further: my name is Bob Jones. I've spent the last several years elbow deep in engine bays fixing exactly this kind of thing, and every video on this channel is built around the repair shops either skip or upsell you on. If that's useful to you, hit subscribe now so the next one lands in your feed. It genuinely helps the channel keep going, and it costs you nothing. All right, let's get into it. Every car built after the late 1990s pulls outside air into the cabin through a vent, usually sitting just below the windshield or tucked behind the glove box. Before that air hits your face, it passes through the filter we're talking about. Two things happen to this filter over time, and there are different problems with different symptoms. The first is simple clogging. Dust and pollen build up layer by layer until air physically can't push through fast enough. Your blower motor has to work harder to move the same volume of air, so it runs louder and less air makes it out the vents at any given fan speed. Your compressor might be running perfectly, pumping ice cold refrigerant through the system, and you'd still get weak, warm feeling airflow. Cold air trickling instead of blowing isn't a refrigerant problem, it's a delivery problem. The second is moisture. Cabin filters sit in a damp environment. Condensation from your AC evaporator core drips near this area, and if the filter holds onto that moisture, it becomes a breeding ground. This is where that musty gym locker smell comes from when you first start your car. People spend money on odor sprays and cabin deodorizers, treating a symptom while the actual source sits behind the glove box growing. So here's the 2-second test I mentioned. Turn your car off completely, open the glove box, give it a sniff right where the filter housing usually sits behind the lower panel. If you catch that damp, moldy smell without the engine running or the AC on, that's your filter talking. Fresh filters are basically odorless. There's a second test, and this one takes about 30 seconds. With the engine off, set your fan to its lowest setting, then to its highest. If the difference in airflow feels smaller than it used to, if even max fan, feels like a light breeze. A clogged filter is squeezing that airflow down at every setting, not just low. Now, how often does this actually need replacing? Manufacturers typically say every 12,000 to 15,000 miles or once a year. But that number assumes average conditions. If you live somewhere dusty, drive through a lot of construction zones, or park under trees that drop debris constantly, you could be looking at half that lifespan. I've pulled filters that were technically in spec on mileage, but already packed solid because the owner lived on a gravel road. One more thing worth knowing, this filter has nothing to do with your check engine light, your fuel economy, or your engine's performance. If someone tries to sell you a cabin filter replacement as part of an engine service, that's a red flag. It's purely about what you breathe and how much air reaches your vents. I want to give you a real comparison because numbers stick better than descriptions. A brand new cabin filter typically allows somewhere around 400 to 500 cubic feet per minute of airflow at max fan speed, depending on the vehicle. A filter that's 4 years old and never replaced can drop that number by half, sometimes more. Your blower motor doesn't know the difference. It just keeps drawing the same amperage, trying to push air through something that's fighting back. Over time, that extra load can shorten the life of the blower motor itself, turning an $18 filter problem into a $150 motor problem if you ignore it long enough. There's also a seasonal trap people fall into. Spring pollen is thick, then summer brings fine dust and dead insects pulled in through the intake, and by the time fall arrives, a filter that started the year clean is completely loaded. Summer is when the symptoms show up loudest, because that's when your blower is working its hardest and your AC has the least margin for error. If you're watching this in July or August and your airflow feels off, there's a good chance this filter has been quietly losing capacity since spring. If this is the first time you're hearing that your AC problem might not be your AC at all, drop a comment with your car's make and year. I read through these and I'll tell you exactly where to look on your specific vehicle if it's not obvious. And if you haven't already, now's a good time to subscribe, because next week I'm covering the second filter almost nobody knows their car even has. All right, let's get your hands dirty, or rather, let's not, because this job is cleaner than most. Step 1, locate the housing on roughly 7 out of 10 vehicles. This is behind the glove box. Open the glove box all the way. On most cars, there are 1 or 2 plastic tabs or a small stopper arm on the side that limits how far it swings open. Squeeze those tabs, or in some cases, just pull the box a little harder than feels natural, and it'll drop down out of the way entirely. Step 2, find the filter door. Once the glove box is out of the way, look up and slightly behind where it was sitting. You're looking for a rectangular plastic cover, sometimes with a small latch, sometimes just a tab you pull. Some Hondas and Toyotas use a simple slide-out door. Some German cars hide it under a small access panel with a quarter-turn fastener. If you're not sure what your car uses, pause the video here and search your exact year, make, and model with the words cabin filter location. 30 seconds of that search saves you from guessing. Step 3, pull the old filter and check the airflow arrow. Cabin filters have an arrow molded into the frame showing which direction air should flow through it. Before you remove the old one, take a picture with your phone or just note which way that arrow points. This matters because installing it backwards won't destroy anything, but it will reduce filtering efficiency and can increase noise. Step 4, inspect what you pull out. This part is oddly satisfying and also a little horrifying. Hold it up to a light. If you can't see daylight through significant portions of it, that filter was past its useful life. If it's damp, discolored, or you catch that musty smell up close, That confirms the moisture issue we talked about earlier. Step 5, install the new filter matching the airflow arrow and click the housing shut. Push the glove box back up until you hear both tabs seat into place. That's the whole job. On most vehicles, once you know where the housing is, it's a 2 to 4 minute task. First timers usually take closer to 10, mostly spent figuring out the glove box tabs. A few notes that'll save you a headache. If your glove box tab feels like it's about to snap, stop and look for a second hidden clip lower down. Most manufacturers use 2, not 1. If your specific car buries the filter somewhere unusual, like under the hood near the wiper cowl, which some European models do, you'll need to pop the cowl panel instead. And that's a slightly bigger job I'll cover in a separate video if enough of you ask for it. For the part itself, stick with a filter that matches your manufacturer's specifications, particularly on micron rating if you have allergies. A cheap generic filter isn't dangerous, but a proper activated carbon filter will do noticeably more for both odor and fine particulate filtering, usually for $2 or $3 more than the basic version. While you've got the housing open, take 30 extra seconds to look at the plastic frame the filter sits in. Sometimes leaves and small debris fall into the housing itself, not just onto the filter. Wipe that out with a dry cloth or a shop rag before you install the new one. Installing a fresh filter on top of a dirty housing gets you maybe half the benefit you're expecting. If you want to go a step further, some auto parts stores sell a cabin filter cleaner spray specifically for the housing and evaporator area, which helps with lingering odor that a filter swap alone won't fully clear. That's optional, and it's a $5 add-on, not a requirement. For most people, a clean filter and a wiped out housing solves this completely. Total cost for this whole job, parts included, usually lands between $10 and $25 depending on your vehicle and whether you go with a basic or carbon filter. Compare that to what a shop would quote you for the same swap, and you'll understand why they rarely bring it up first. So next time your AC feels weak and you're about to book a shop appointment, check behind your glove box first. It's the cheapest possible fix, and I'd guess it solves the problem for a good chunk of you watching this. If this saved you a shop visit or even just saved you from second guessing your compressor, do me a favor and hit like on the video. It tells YouTube to actually show this to more people who need it, and that's the only real payment a channel like this gets. Subscribe if you haven't, and turn on notifications if you want these fixes before they end up costing you a repair bill instead. Next video, I'm walking through that second hidden filter I mentioned earlier, the one tucked somewhere even most mechanics forget to check. I'll see you there.